Hello everyone and welcome back. So this is part 2 of session 8 MMO development class. So the first session of this class was really just a discussion about what's been going on this past week and the mention of 5 new videos that need to go up for you guys, not including these class videos here. Now it's time for us to begin the discussion of game mechanics, the first of many. And for those of you sitting out there and you're thinking to yourself, man, we only need 1 or 2 of these and let's get the damn MMO done. It doesn't work that way, ladies and gentlemen.
I thought that's how it worked. I thought we were going to have this and then we'll go ahead and code the MMO tomorrow.
I know.
Close the class out next week and we're good.
Yeah. No, not at all.
Yeah.
This is something that we'll be going over quite a bit, I'm sure. But we need some place to start. So Zach took some time last night and put together a mind map that we are going to use to help us start working our way through this beast, because coming up with the game mechanics for an MMO is a daunting task. Even if you truly stop to think about World of Warcraft and all of the mechanics that are involved there, suddenly what seems like a relatively simple game becomes very, very complex. Well, with over 5 million lines of code, it has to be complex. So, so that is exactly what we're about to do. Again, everybody type I agree in the IRC that we know that this could go in circles and you guys want us to continue. I got to see a handful of them before we continue. Okay, good enough. Thank you guys very much. So again, I've already warned about how this can go. Everybody is aware that this is I've cleared my entire...
The proverbial asses are now covered.
Yep, I've cleared my entire evening, so is Zach, so that, I mean, because you just don't sit down for a few hours and there's the mechanics for gameplay. It just doesn't work that way. So Zach, I'm going to scoot over a little.
All right, I'm going to try not to run over my cables while I scoot over.
Just mine instead.
Yeah.
I'm being hung.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, let's see here.
Excuse us, guys.
Various implements of computer operation. All right, so what I've got here are some basic categories, because I don't like the idea of just saying, hey, these are game mechanics. There's just too many different ways that gameplay mechanics, as far as I'm concerned, can go. I think it needs to be broken out into, at the very least, a series of basic categories, and that's what I've done here. This mind map, if you have downloaded or if you haven't, it is available for you inside the classroom. I posted it in the MMO Lounge. You should be able to find the thread. It's there in the Novamind format. Of course, it's also in PNG if you just want to look at it as a nice, pretty picture. And I put it in OPML if you have an outliner of some sort that you want to drop it into. I've got a great outliner on my iPad, and it opens up OPML files very well, so you can just see this as an outline instead of a mind map. Anywho, so again, a lot of this is incomplete. What I wanted to do is just kind of start off at sort of the very top with character mechanics. And I know we've been throwing out disclaimer after disclaimer tonight, but that's only because this is kind of a touchy subject. And I'm going to kind of toss out one more. I don't want what I'm about to present here to start closing your mind. Really, I'm just throwing this out as some guidelines, things that I have considered. There are some things in here that I think you can more or less take for granted in terms of an MMO, things that you're probably going to need in some form or format. But don't look at this as the all-inclusive, this is what we must have in terms of mechanics, and start shutting your mind off this early. I'd like this to be, if anything else, a launch pad from which you can start adding your own ideas, say, hey, this thing you've got listed, I don't think you really need in an MMO anymore.
Zach, all of your stuff is stupid.
That's fine, yeah. Now that we got that out of the way, we can just go from there.
Our game shall consist of us standing in a corner doing nothing.
Riding wooden crates around in the sky.
Awesome. Go ahead and stretch this window down a little bit further. And perfect. So that if you would like at any point to bring a person in that wants to add anything, all you got to do is just unmute them.
Yeah.
Give you full control over this.
Well, what I'm going to do first is just kind of go over what I've outlined here. Hopefully you've already looked over it, but I don't count on anybody actually having done their homework, especially since I only gave it out like a couple hours ago. So anyway, as I mentioned, I broke all this down into a series of categories. And real quick, let me just talk about what these are. First off, character mechanics. This is just going to be basically how your character works in terms of the game. Not necessarily what your character does, not the actions he performs, not the ways in which he interacts in the world. Just what it is that makes up your character. What is the character experience? Then combat mechanics. You can't get away from it. An MMO is still going to be wrapped around combat. Story, of course, is important, and the environment, the look, the style, all that is important. But in the end, we play MMOs because we want to fight something. Either we want to fight the computer or we want to fight each other. And that's it. And combat can take on a lot of levels. Even if you're not necessarily in it to kill something, it's still combat in some form. Next, world mechanics. How does the world behave? I think we've said several times throughout this class that we're not looking to have your standard static world where it feels like the player has no impact whatsoever. We want to have something that has some variations, some changes. We want a world that feels alive and feels dynamic, yet remains persistent. So I've broken out a category specifically for world mechanics and how the world behaves. Next, item mechanics. The items that you consume, things like food or potions or Pop-Tarts. We should definitely have Pop-Tarts in our MMO. But not only that, things like gear, which traditionally improve your character stats in some form or fashion. And it makes sense, even if you don't like the idea of your character getting more powerful with gear. If I've got a bulletproof vest on and this one's got a lot more armor than the one I was wearing a minute ago, it stands to reason that if my very being is comprised of a list of stats, then my defense stats just went up because I have better armor on now. But that is another aspect of item mechanics. Next is group mechanics. This is a little bit of a cloudy area, but I threw it out there anyway. Because when in games like WoW, or really a lot of different MMOs, certainly not all of them, because some of them do put a heavy emphasis on the idea of just soloing and leaving it at that, but most of the mainstream MMOs out there have some emphasis on teaming up with a group of friends and the requirements of doing that. I think hopefully most of you are relatively familiar with the concept of playing an MMO, and with any luck whatsoever, you've played it with more than, just yourself, and you've seen that you've got the conventional, the 5-person group. You've got your tank, you've got your healer, and you got 3 people who do nothing but bang on the bad guy as hard as they possibly can. That is a mechanic. That's the 5-person group mechanic. It probably started even before EverQuest, but then, WoW has certainly picked it up.
It's so beautiful because understanding that mechanic is so critical. I remember when we hit 80 and knew nothing about the game, and how we made it to 80 is still kind of surprising. And Terry, myself, and Angela, just the 3 of us, 2 of us clothies, Terry a warlock, me a mage, and Angie a hunter, decided to take on Pinnacle.
Utgard Pinnacle.
Yeah, Utgard Pinnacle, thank you. So there was no healer. There was no tank. That was interesting to say the least.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry.
But even then, nobody is saying that we absolutely have to build our MMO on the same mechanic. We don't have to make grouping be a mandatory 5-person team, and even if we did, no one is forcing us to say you got to have a tank, a healer, and 3 damage dealers. You could have various levels of groups for all kinds of different numbers of people. It's just one of those things I threw out there. You'll notice it doesn't even branch off. I just tossed it out just to give folks something to think about. The next, and this is also incomplete, it's just something I threw out because it is going to require significant thought. In fact, this is one that I think could branch out possibly more deeply than all of the others. And this would be profession mechanics. How do you define what the professions are? How do they affect the character? How do they affect the world? How do they affect the economy? Because that's a huge thing in a lot of modern MMOs. As soon as you can start crafting things and making potions and gear and various other items in the game, that starts to have a significant effect on what other players are doing. So you're literally affecting gameplay for others when you make stuff. And that's an entire realm unto itself. But I didn't really get that far down the list.
Now, before we start diving into any one specific area, I do want to point out, and you're more than welcome to bring NATO here in just a second to see what it is that he had to say a second ago. But we really do need to start by putting some high-level constraints into place, some categories, if you will, and then start drilling down. Otherwise, we will end up in a situation like we were in a few weeks ago, where it is a bunch of random back and forth. We're trying to keep this a bit more structured, and if we are all over the place, that does become messy. And this, once again, drops everything down into a major category, and we can start going down from there. Now, I take it up under world mechanics, you have economics?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
I mean, but that would certainly be part of it.
But anyway, sorry.
Actually,
I jumped the gun and asked the first question.
If it was me, if I was actually controlling this thing, I would do this instead, and I would actually have
good. That's what
economy
I would do.
Mechanics.
Yep.
They would be their own thing.
Good. Because that's. Yeah.
Awesome. And again, this, just like group mechanics and just like profession mechanics at the moment, don't currently branch off. I just didn't get around to start adding some of my thoughts in on that.
Yeah.
This mind map is very new, something I just put together just early last night as a way to try to delineate some of this, because I have this notion, and if I'm wrong, that's great. I've been wrong about so many things in my life. What's one more? But I think if you just grab a great big group of people together, even players, even folks who are hardcore into MMOs, and just say, hey, we need to discuss game mechanics, it's kind of like standing there with a pistol in your hand staring at the Death Star going, where do I aim this thing? Because there's so many aspects of it, aspects to it, that it can become very difficult to figure out what part of it you really want to talk about. Raven just said pets with a question mark. That would be under like a vanity mechanic, which is so purely incidental that I can't be bothered to care about it right now. But now, unless you mean like combat pets, that would just be another extension of a character, and generally a very specific kind of character as far as I'm concerned. But that's something else entirely.
So go and check with NATO. See what NATO, since he's been.
I bring NATO into this. I've never operated this thing before.
Just find Mr.
Chris Morris,
and then just unmute his mic, his little greenie. There you go.
Chris.
NATO.
Hello.
Hello,
how's it
sir.
going?
Okay, what you got?
In what particular? Well,
in regards to what you put in the IRC just a moment ago, where you had a very specific thing that you wanted to start with, and you said you had lots of ranting to do.
It's a different approach than Zach has gone, and it's much more focusing on what's coming at it from a sort of what the player does in day-to-day at different parts of the game. The idea being is that when a player creates a character, they have a mindset of what they might want to do with that character. However, because it's a starting character, they don't have much knowledge or ability of the game, and they have to sort of work on what areas they'd like to gain the sort of knowledge they need to, and then advance with their character. So, in my mind, how a character advances from starting to a notional end game, which is the end of the advancement system. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's the end of levels if we have levels, or the end of content or quests. It's the end of the advancement system. So at that point forward, we've decided this is as strong as a character can get in the current meta game, as it were. So,
but I'm trying to picture how, from a high level view, you would want to divide this up to drilling down in, because so far the things you're talking about could fit into these categories.
Yes, yeah.
And that's what we need. We really need to say, are we at the moment discussing economy? Are we at the moment discussing combat? Do you see what I'm saying?
I do. However, I think I would put in a completely separate tab. To me, the important things are how you create a character, how that character advances through the world, what that character...
Creation, growth, and development. Cool, that's the first two.
Yeah. And what that character will be doing when they reach the end of their advancement and what they'll be going on to do.
Wow, named off almost all your stuff, Zach.
Yeah, he did. The only thing that I would just... It's not even a change. I would just kind of tweak the E at the end of the word, maybe, is once your player has grown to the maximum they're allowed to grow, you really only have two choices. And it's so simple that while I had considered putting it in here, I didn't even bother with it, because they can either change, and this would be akin to World of Warcraft's respecking system, where you decide, well, I've already gone as far as I can go as this particular type of character. Now I want to change what my character does to something else. And then you either regrow or redevelop your skills in that front, or you just start continuing with the day-to-day. But at that point, it's just content consumption. It has nothing to do with moving your character forward. In terms of how your character is moving through the world, at that point, your character is done. Your character is finished. And you're just chewing on content. In a lot of cases, you're chewing on it over and over again until you get tired of it, and you decide to just either quit playing the game entirely because you feel like you've seen it all, and a lot of people do, or you grab a whole nother character and you try to go about it in a different way. And that's not just true of MMOs. That's true of just about every RPG that I think I've ever played, where once I get through it all the way to the end, the very next thing I want to do, if the game was worthwhile at all, is I want to go right back to level 1, and I want to try it out with, this time, a stealthy character instead of a great big axe-swinging, full frontal warrior.
That's why I'm just trying to get a high-level understanding of what NATO's talking about as far as how he would lay this out, because it's funny, is as he was talking and you expanded that, it literally followed exactly what he was saying. So
I think it does. And what I want to, and I'm throwing this out, not that I disagree with anything you're saying, NATO, but what I don't want to have happen is for there to be a constant insistence that the idea of mechanics has to be this cloudy sort of, I don't think it can be broken down into categories because it's all about what the player experiences, and it should be more, it can't be like that at all. If we are to make informed and wise decisions about how the gameplay should go, we've got to be able to turn some things into concrete categories where we can say, this is how it needs to move forward. And because that's actually why I took the time to break a lot of this stuff down. It can't just be cloudy, because if it is, you can't put a firm grip on any one thing and solve any given problem.
That's why
at some point it will absolutely have to be discrete. It's going to have to be defined.
It's ones and
otherwise
zeros.
We can't code it.
That's right.
You can't say we want this ethereal way of progressing through the game. We can't code ethereal.
I was just trying to picture
numbers.
I wasn't suggesting that we didn't categorize. I was just saying that I would categorize some things slightly differently.
How so?
I wouldn't. I don't know. It's prioritizing more than categorizing. I made some notes myself, and the 4 things I've picked out that's very key to me is, as I said before, the advancement system, because that's basically what the players need to be doing as their experience of the game. Like Zach said, once you get to the end game, you've got a few things. You're chewing through content, whether that's instances or PvP or whatever. But the advancement system, to me, you have to identify an instance of an advance, how you want to track advancements, what advancements do to a character in terms of what sections are advanced, in terms of sort of whether they have skills or whether they have abilities or things like that, and how much control the player has over that process, whether they're picking anything or if it's generally a global update of all your abilities and skills of your character, whatever.
Sure, NATO. And I'm following you on all of that. And what I'm seeing here is all of those areas are at a high level. They're in character mechanics that can be expanded upon. That's the beautiful thing about mind maps. Mind maps are just a place that you start throwing a bunch of ideas that you visually see, and it's just so much more stimulating than just a straight page or a wall of text. And of course, reordering stuff is very easy to do, but at the same time, before reordering anything, Zach, I mean, like here, starting out with character creation is that's important. I mean, because we've got to decide how do we want to handle that in the game. I'm not saying that that's nothing, just so that you understand, nothing here is saying that this is the first place we start talking about. right now this is just a high-level start on all of the things that we're going to need to discuss and much more. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think you've overestimated my. I was telling Gab that I have information to give. I wasn't questioning the methodology.
Well, okay, let's do this. You've got stuff together. We got you on the horn. Since Zach's already got all these major categories there, what was the first thing you had on your paper to give?
Identification of advancement instances. What behavior do we want to encourage and reward in players? What things do we want, at what point in the game, what do we want our player to be doing? So when they come in as a new character, do we want them to be doing quests, or do we want them to be adventuring out and discovering areas, or going straight into a sort of PvP environment? I think sort of a timeline of a character, an average sort of character, is a good thing to sort of hash out, so we know what sections are weighted and more important.
Zach, all we need to do is branch off of growth and development underneath all the ones that you have at the moment, and then let NATO start sharing ideas, because it deals with growth.
Well, if he's talking about literally character advancement, that would already fall into the category of improvement, which is exactly how I'd pictured that. I mean, it's whatever you would consider the leveling process to be, the life of the character. So, I mean, I could just start from here and just now start, because what NATO is, as far as what I'm gathering from it, it's just going into more specifics over this idea. Yeah? Am I right? Am I wrong?
If he's wrong, don't be shy to say.
Yeah, just say no. You're wrong. That's not what I mean at all.
That's right. Yeah. I think it's a very important place to start. So it's what your player will be doing. It's the main section of the game for the player. So you have to get that right as soon as possible. Is how I'm thinking. So I think you should take priority.
Well, let's start here then. So, what ideas did you have?
Well, to begin with, we've got to, I think, hashing out what particular types of gameplay we want to include would be. So, traditionally, you have quests or missions, or however you would call them, which are tasks given to a character by an NPC. Traditionally, it can be you can develop the idea that tasks to be completed. I'll put it that way. Of which you get a reward. They can be various different things, such as getting an item or killing a particular number of creatures, or whatever. But they're a general stock term. Notionally, quests would further a meta timeline of the game. So you find out more about the story as you went on different quests. After that, I think areas such as instances get very important sort of mid-development of characters. You start getting small group gameplay, which develops up into high group gameplay as the character reaches the end game content. After that, you have sort of PvP environment, which can be slotted in anywhere. One thing Toastage pointed out to me is that the more player versus player content you have, the less repetitive the game will feel, because you always have the unknown element of the other person. Now, I'm not a particular fan of wandering around in Azeroth and then suddenly an alliance jumps me and I get killed.
And neither are most PvPers. Most people who are heavily into PvP are already in a battlegrounds or an arena style match, that sort of thing.
But yeah, it's the most repeatable kind of content. Because, like I said, there's a random element of the other player. You don't know what they're going to do. Whereas if you have an instance and a particular boss, NPC, that boss will do things in a certain order every time. It's predictable, which is good and bad, depending on which way you come to it. Those are the sort of main... Oh, sorry, and an economy. An economy system, I think, is very important. I mean, I posted up the mini game. It's another repeatable gameplay element in the same way that the PvP system is. Mainly because you can never have enough money. You always find you always want more money. You can always find something else to buy.
Oh, cool! It's just like the real world.
And also, a slight development from what I've seen, what people have been talking about with the train system, where you can sculpt your own bits of land and own your own section. I quite like the idea that small groups of players, like a guild or corporation, might buy a certain amount of land and develop it into a small town, which I don't know how possible this is. Lee might be able to tell me, but might get have NPCs come and start populating your town.
I'm not saying you're wrong about anything you're saying, but I am going to say you're getting away from your topic.
Yes, yeah.
And that's the one thing that I am going to be watching out for like a hawk right now, just because of what happened last time. Now, I don't mind...
I would change one thing, Zach.
Yeah.
My thought here is I would extend another one off of gameplay, and I would call that major category task or just quest mechanics, and remove it from over there under just character mechanics itself, because when we start getting into quests / tasks / missions, it gets into a very complex world all on its own.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I would probably leave it here just for the purpose that it's serving right now, because all it's doing is subdividing out ways about which the character could be improved.
But I would, at the very least, I would still add another major category so that the details of it can be there, because you can always do the link line back over to that.
And anything that we haven't expanded upon so far, I'm going to put on this side of the map for now. So there is some sort of... But anyway... I had not last night underneath my world mechanics, which I realize is the first time you guys have seen all this, but that's okay. You can ignore it for now. Player-owned areas. I should have put that in, but I didn't. And then group / corporate / guild, whatever makes the most sense to you, owned areas.
Yeah, nice.
And then I'll just go ahead and put that away, because we're not really talking about that right now. So your point was noted, but let's stay on characters for now.
Okay. The last one that I thought of, I'm not sure if any more can be thought of, but exploration. If you go out into the world and you discover all the locations, then you might gain some sort of advancement for just going out there and discovering things. I think that's
sure. Just a quick discovery experience. I mean, I can throw it in there.
I mean, it's not a sort of main element of gameplay, but it's something I think rewarding the player for is good. And I think more than just a title, as it were, or an achievement.
I do like what Judge just threw in there, just to toss up, and that's achievement system. Just to make note.
Let's see. I would throw that probably down under this level.
Yeah.
And yes, folks, we already know that many MMOs already have all these, especially mainstream ones that whose name I'm going to try not to mention as much as I can, but still, we all know which one I'm talking about. So, what else you got there, NATO?
Okay. Once we've decided what aspects we want, aspects of gameplay we want to, what behaviour we want to encourage, working out a system of tracking how much a character is advanced, and at what point in that advancement do we want to reward the player with reward the character with extra abilities or the acquisition of new abilities and how that's at what point that comes in. I mean, a lot of games, both MMOs and tabletop games, use experience points as a general idea.
I think you could say that's become more than a convention. I mean, it's every RPG that I know of out there has some form or format of the good old-fashioned experience points. Whether they're just used in a cumulative nature to figure out how far along your character's progressed, or whether they're almost like a form of currency and you spend them in order to unlock an ability or whatever. They're everywhere you look.
I mean, a lot of the MMOs and games like Dungeons and Dragons have gone down the route of levels. So you attain a certain number of experience points, and you get to the next level, at which your character suddenly gets better, and it can lead to an issue where your character's walking around and gets attacked by a giant rat who he has killed thousands of giant rats before, or walks into a tavern he's never been into before and discovers it, and suddenly he has a new level. And it's not triumphant enough. It's not a big thing in the character's advancement. I mean, if you get the next level by killing the person that killed your wife, or being the first to the highest mountain in the world, then it is epic enough. But I think gaining each level, if we have levels, should feel like a success, a great success. Which would imply that there are fewer levels than other games.
Yeah, but here's a concern that I have, because you've already said you want things like some sort of reward experience system for like discovery. If levels are to be acquired through the acquisition of something like experience points, then you are invariably going to end up in a situation where you need 1,000 points to make it to the next level, and you've got 996. And all you need is 4 more points, and so you will end up killing that poor rat who gives you 9 experience points. And that pushes you to the next level. That's just how it goes, because it's a cumulative number. Or you will walk into that tavern you've never been in before. You'll get 5 experience points just because you discovered it for the first time. And bada bing, you're now the next level. So it's not epic, but the system that even you defined just a few minutes ago opens the door for exactly the problem you say shouldn't ever come up.
Oh yes, I was just about to propose a possible solution.
And that is?
And that is, I hadn't come up with the idea of milestones, which are essentially an attainment of a level, which are positioned through the advancement system. So a character gains a level at particular points, whether it would be completing an instance, or completing the end of a chest chain, or discovering all the locations in a set area, so that it's almost like merging achievements and a leveling system, so that each time, theoretically, first of all, there would be more milestones than there would be attainable milestones. So you might have 200 milestones in the game, I'm just throwing out numbers, but a character might only be able to get 50 of them. So theoretically then you can play through the game 4 times and have the content be different entirely. Obviously, with limited manpower and the like, that's reduced, but I like the idea that there's more ways of playing the game, just more ways of advancing your character than just going through the main story quest. For example, in games like Morrowind or Fallout, I've gone out and got to the highest level you can without touching the main quest, because I found it just hasn't spoken to me or something, or I just wanted to wander off and do what I like.
You also got your acrobatic skill all the way up to the top because you stood in the middle of town and jumped up and down for 6 days.
Oh, yeah,
You also
but
got your sneaking up to the highest level it possibly could be because you aimed yourself at a wall, held down the W key, and snuck when there was a guard on the other side of the room.
Woohoo! Thank God for
Yeah,
toothpicks.
I'm
Exactly.
not necessarily suggesting that we have a skill.
I hear you.
You know, attain as you use ability, but yeah, I personally, I don't know about anyone else. I like this idea of a milestone system. I'm picking up with it, but I think it makes the achievement of the next quote-unquote level seem much more controlled, which is good from a design point of view. But
I guess it really depends on how you handle what those milestones are. Because it seems like if you're really not careful, you'll just end up with probably the easiest leveling MMO that's ever been made, so that you could sit down and in an afternoon go ahead and get your character up to max if you knew what you were doing.
that is something that people do say about other MMOs, that when they want to get a new character to the top level to do whatever they like, whatever it's PvE or PvE, that they have to drudge through the same content just to get the character where they want. Which I'm not sure this system would solve. I'm not sure it's something I want to solve, but it's a notable point, as you say, of the milestone system, which I need to write that up properly. I did make a post a couple of weeks back. But yeah, that's mostly what I'm thinking of for an advancement system. So it's sort of like levels, but not, and it has a sort of XP system, but it doesn't. You'd be able to work out when your next advancement theoretically should be. For example, if you're doing a quest chain that has involved, you have to go and rescue somebody, but first you have to find out all the information of where they are and how many people are guarding them, etc., etc., etc. The mission before you go rescue them, you can be pretty sure that when you rescue them and get them out, that you should be getting an advancement. Or if you've only got one location left in this zone to find, you can be pretty sure when you find it, you're going to get an advancement. So it's, I think, a little more controllable, a little more understandable than an XP system. It gives us a more triumphant feeling when you get to that next level, which is really there's probably a better name for this, but it's sort of like the Portal effect. When you're playing through Portal, you enter a test chamber and you stand there for a minute and you go, how the hell am I going to solve this one? And 10 minutes later, or 15 minutes later, or 2 hours later, you solve it. You walk out and think, yeah, I did really well on that one.
But the only problem is with that is then replay is nowhere near as rewarding or fun.
That is a possible issue,
and
as I say.
And that is what keeps World of Warcraft going, is with so many people that are just constantly making alts so that they could experience the game from a new race's point of view or new class point of view. If we suddenly take that out, where it's like, I always have to go do this same dungeon and then rescue this same girl every time to reach my next milestone, would not be exciting to me. First time, kind of cool. Well, no, not to me, because the problem is it's so controlled that. Does that make sense, Zach? It's too controlled.
I think it becomes so controlled that it becomes hard because you don't know how to get it. Because when you first start the game, you don't know what gives you milestones. You're at the point where you go, you don't even know what to do to get to the next level.
Well, I think
it just kind of magically happens when you do something.
I think if you were to implement something like this, it would have to be very much like achievements are on most games, consoles, even World of Warcraft, where you have a map screen of some point or of some sort that you can open up and then see how this breaks down. But the only thing that it seems you would have to do, and I'm just going to kind of throw this up here for now. Hang on, let's see. I'm trying to figure out exactly how I want to do this. let me try this. Let's grab right here, and I'm just gonna say,
Lee, did you go jogging?
No.
because it would end up, it seems to me, becoming hierarchical, where you'd have all of your level 1, and I'm just going to throw in level 1 just because we all understand the concept of levels, okay? Just so we have some sort of convention.
Yeah.
Level 1 milestone, and then if I copy that off, so you'd have, a certain number of these that you could perform to complete level 1 and actually become level 2. And then for each one of these, you'd have to have some sort of level 2 milestone with the exact same thing. Oh, here.
And it wouldn't take very long before people figured out exactly the easiest way to get to each milestone, to get you to each advancement. And then there would be guides on the internet, and then before you know it, it'd take, somebody will be 0 to 50 in 3 hours. And
because if you're not doing this, if you're not doing this, it seems like in short order you're going to end up with improperly scaled quests. So that if it was just a static list like achievements, because we've all seen achievement systems, and you can complete those achievements in any order you like. And really, all they're there for is just bragging rights. They don't really help your character. They don't give you anything. But you can say, hey, yeah, I've done this, and that's why I'm special. But if you handle leveling in that way, especially in terms of things like, well, you have to complete this quest chain, then what you're saying, unless it was a hierarchical system like I've shown here, is that I could complete that quest chain at any point in order to go from level X to level X plus 1. So I could go back and grab what should have otherwise been something I grabbed very early on, and that would allow and go through that quest chain and go from level 84 to level 85. But now, because of the time in which the player has chosen to do that, you've got to have some way to make that quest more difficult, or you're right back in the same situation of killing the rat to go to the next level. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, you could, like you said, and that's something I didn't think about.
But the reason I bring it up is that unless you had it like this, of course, scaling is a problem. But creating some sort of tree like this and turning it into some sort of like choose your own adventure map to the highest possible level, you end up having to make a shitload more content, if you'll pardon me for saying so, just to give people the semblance, the idea that maybe they can make some choices. And yeah, I realize that a lot of these could be interconnected to one another. But if the world is going to seem continuous, and if choices that you make are going to seem like they have any effect whatsoever, a lot of these are going to need their very own branches of subquests to choose from. And so you end up just exponentially going up higher and higher and higher into a whole lot more choices that you need to make. So that, let's say if we were using a system like this, that your character could only go up 10 levels, Think about where a tree like this would be 10 iterations down. And how much content you'd have to put in just to make it seem like the choices that you made at level 4 are having any relevancy whatsoever as you progress through level 5.
Now let's do this. Chris, do me a favor. Be thinking about that for a second. NATO's begging and pleading to come in.
You mean Gavin?
Gavin, NATO. Yeah. Hi, NATO. Let's go ahead and bring Gavin in. Let's leave NATO on the line. If it starts to get too squeaky, then we'll mute NATO for just a moment. Hey, Gavin.
Hey, how are you?
All right, give your thoughts, man.
Yeah, this is gonna come completely out of left field.
Can you turn yourself up just a little bit?
I can. Let me find the right.
You're a little quiet.
I need to find the right button.
That's the mute button.
Better?
No, not even at all.
Oh, I wonder if this auto or volume things. Typical.
Always makes me nervous having headphones on when someone says, hang on, let me see if I can turn this
Yeah,
up.
I know. I'm totally waiting to get my eyes blasted against your
Blam!
monitor. Yeah. No, and just while he's fixing that, NATO, I just want to say I'm not disagreeing with the idea of what you're saying. I'm just saying that I'm having a difficult time envisioning it being a successful system because this is the way that I see it. I see this. I see a list of achievements being a very useful thing as long as it doesn't necessarily advance the character because you don't have a whole lot of control over the order in which a character decides to complete an achievement list. Yes. And then everybody was quiet.
They're both still there.
Did we lose audio?
Can you guys still hear us?
Because I don't hear
I
Gavin.
can still hear you.
Is
Yeah.
this
Oh, okay.
working now?
Okay. It is working.
Am I
We'll just
audible?
go ahead and try it.
No, you're not any louder, though. Bummer.
I can't work out why. What? There's nothing different in my system. It's just.
Yeah, you're definitely a lot more quiet than usual. Yeah, do like Mike says. Put the, I don't know, swallow your microphone.
Put it in your mouth.
Oh, wait a minute. This is Gavin. Just kidding. That was just my way of saying bring it closer to your
Hey,
mouth.
I'm not that much of a noob. I'm just.
Well,
I can't
it's
work
not
out
too
how-
terribly late over there. Just scream.
Yes, I shall endeavour to project my voice more.
Awesome.
The hell was I going to say? Right.
Oh, come on.
yes,
You got it.
remove levels altogether. We don't need
Okay.
levels.
Okay.
Immediately, you obviate a load of problems that people have been talking about with the whole WoW thing. The main one being this whole idea that once you've played through the single-player campaign and done it, it becomes all about getting to the end game. So why? There's this delay in getting to the end game because people have to play through the same stuff. Well, for a start, we've already been talking about the world being dynamic and persistent. But equally, mountains and chasms don't come and go in over the course of a week. Time passes relatively slowly. And similarly, in the real world, people don't suddenly get better, stronger, faster. And they don't get that much better, stronger, faster over the course of their life. They might get richer, enabling them to buy better stuff, or they might get better connected, allowing them to talk to the right people to get better stuff, or there's that sort of thing, which is part and parcel of spending time playing a game. You earn money, you make friends, rather than having leveling up being reaching a certain amount of experience, which you, as you say, you might do by completing an important quest, but you might equally do by falling down some stairs. It's just if you save the princess from the evil, nasty person, then all of a sudden, the king is going to be grateful. So you actually get a tangible, almost in-game benefit rather than some mechanical, statistical abstraction. And
It's actually kind of funny to hear such a huge proponent of the tabletop experience turn away from levels.
the point, yeah, but we were having a long old back and forth in the IRC while you were talking earlier, and the thing was, even though D&D had a level cap, you'd never play a character that wouldn't get dead by the time they reached. You'd never be at top level. So although there was a level cap, the levels were much more spread out, and they were much more sort of the level cap was only really notional, because it becomes a moot point if it would require you to spend literally years just playing D&D to get that point. To get the long-term draw of a game, this is my problem with the whole idea that MMO is synonymous with WoW-style hack-and-slash-based, experience-based systems, because that's the worst sort of Dungeons and Dragons game.
But it's also the one that gets played.
Yeah, but that's because it requires DMs to actually put time and thought and effort into it. The best sort of games of D&D are about more than just hacking and slashing. Obviously, there's a huge amount of hack and slash involved in it, but it's about why you're hacking and slashing and why you're working with these people. And maybe you're working with someone in your group who you don't want in the group for whatever reason. I've played games where we've had a good group which has picked up an evil character unbeknownst to them in it. And it's about the level of depth in the world that you can access. It's a bit like Lee's complaints with Unity, and you can't access the low level stuff. I keep coming back to Neverwinter Nights 2 because that's the best I've seen it done in a computer game. I know it wasn't an MMO, but it is essentially the same.
But that's where you come. That's where you come against a major problem, which is the players of MMOs majoritively don't care about the story. They won't if they can't. Because the point I was trying to make about the portal effect is that the player wants to succeed. They want to have an euphoria of finishing that test or getting to the next level that will push them to go to the next one to get the next thing. I don't.
My example
I think
about the king and the princess. You know, if all of a sudden you've got the king of a little kingdom, obviously, who owes you his family's existence. The sort of people that he can hook you up with, the sort of new weapons that they might have available, the sort of contacts that he's
right, and then because it's an MMO, he will inevitably end up owing his life, his family, and his existence to hundreds and thousands of other players as well, because they all saved his bloody daughter.
Also, players have gotten used to that. Players of MMOs and RPGs, they're used to saving the princess and having the king love them and being the most important person in the universe. So it's whether or not you're making. Sorry, I'll let Gav finish.
Yeah, come on, Gavin.
Well, no, I mean, see, this really it comes down to a fundamental thing. Are we going to make a WoW clone, or are we going to actually think about approaching an MMO as its own thing, an MMO?
But be careful.
RPG,
be really careful that you don't start taking the idea of a convention as, oh, well, fold your arms, toss your head up in the air and say, well, now we're making a WoW clone.
I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater on this, but it is a fundamental thing that whether, you know, like what Chris was just saying, you know, people are used to it, and all the games that have cloned WoW have done so because people are used to it, and it'll definitely sell. And what happens? People go back to WoW. Why? Because it's been around the longest. It's doing the best. You know, you're actually, you know, trying to make another MMO that is going to be.
I would argue that. I'd argue you go back to WoW because the gameplay is one of the smoothest out there. But the idea of leveling predates WoW by, and I don't even care about tabletop games whatever. I know it's where it all started, but that's where a lot of the base concepts for everything started. But just about every single role-playing game I've ever played electronically has had some form of leveling system. And what you haven't yet done, and I'm willing to hear it, you haven't given me a compelling reason to do away with it yet. I can see so many pros, so many benefits to having a leveling system. It immediately gives you something to work toward. It gives you a level of prestige that anybody can see without having to know the history of whether or not you saved the princess.
I hate to say that the military cloned WoW, but tie the military into this. There's a leveling system in the military, and I see the people in the military that I need to bow down to and kiss their feet, and I see the people that are beneath me and haven't gone through all of the...
You see the medals on their jacket, and you know what they've been through, and you're like, oh, damn.
Well, the medals are their achievements.
Sure.
Their rank
those
is
stars,
their level.
those lapels, man.
Exactly.
But I think it's a great...
And you feel, as I was in the military, so good when you level up.
Now, Garmer, you said, Zach, that's just lazy. What exactly do you mean, Garmer?
Actually, while he's putting his thought together to drop it down, now is a very good time to let's go ahead and close this video. We'll pick it right back up in the next one. We're real close to an hour, and T Gun said absolutely. Oh, that's awesome. I'll be SPC in October. So yeah, Michael, you can go to the toilet now. We're going to take a break. We will be back in Michelle. Oh, that's what I get for looking for 2 seconds. Yeah, we'll be back
we'll be back right after this.
Right after this. Thank you very much.